let's start with the introduction. My name is Ciprian Hackman. I will be your host today and moderator and facilitator. And this is the etcd operator working group biweekly call. So happy to see everyone here. In case there is someone else that wants to introduce himself, I think most of the people here were in the previous call, so we did that. But if there is anyone else that wants to do that, now's your chance. You want Justin?
I'll quickly say hi. Hi, I'm Justin. I, along with Ciprian, have been a maintainer of KOps for a long time, and as part of the KOps project, we use the etcd manager thing. I'm sorry I missed last week. I had a conflict, but yeah, it's great to see everyone.
Cool. Unless there is anyone else, let's get down to business. We had some things from last time, so I think what's on most people's mind is the summary of the survey results. So Josh, do you have them? Would you like to present them? Sorry, we cannot hear you.
You're on mute.
Yeah, give me just a second to bring them up.
Yeah.
And to link them to the notes, unless somebody else already did.
I don't think we did.
Okay. Link them to the notes, and then I will share my screen.
Okay.
Okay, there we go. Okay. Okay. So this is a summary of the survey results after doing some data cleaning and some correlation. We got 52 responses. Some of those were removed from the aggregate statistics, mostly because, for example, 2 people said they absolutely would not use an official operator even if one were available. And as a result, I don't think we care about those people's development priorities. Since they're not going to be using it, what have we come up with? One organization was very enthusiastic about filling out the survey, and several of their staff did. So I condensed their responses into a single response, so as not to bias the results of the survey, because the rest, we didn't require people to identify themselves, but some people were identifiable based on their comments and other answers, which, by the way, I've scrubbed from the summary. And so they gave us that information. As you might expect, pretty much everybody who filled it out was using etcd at work, although not absolutely everybody. Some people are also using it in academic or personal projects. The couple of people not using it at work were using it in academic projects. People are running etcd in pods, the majority of them in regular pods, basically about 2/3 in regular pods, 1/3 in static pods. We did have a few people say they were using it in containers in a non-Kubernetes environment, which was interesting.
Just one comment.
Yeah.
Actually, for the static pod in Kubernetes environment, I guess most likely is for the kubeadm to kubeadm created Kubernetes environment is etcd is run as static pod by default. I think it's that case.
Yeah. Yeah, and also to take those as a caveat, we don't know that people necessarily went and did a kube control and did an actual check on what they were running, versus just answering this off the top of their head. So
there's another possibility. There's when the kubeadm creates a Kubernetes cluster, on each master node, there is a static pod etcd running. I guess there's another possibility. It's possible for the user to create a static pod on each working node to run etcd, just supporting the application instead of API server. Is possible use case, but it's a little weird.
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, I just want. I mean, I think most. I don't know most, but like KOps, kubeadm. I think the like GKE and stuff. They all run etcd and static pods. I don't know whether. I'm actually surprised that there are as many people running in regular pods, because that suggests that they are running etcd either for the sort of nested mode, whatever we're calling that, or they're running etcd for their application, right? But I guess we will come up to that later. Like,
to give you a use case example, I run etcd in regular pods, using topology to make sure that they don't land on the same node. And this is for Postgres/Patroni. So I'm using the same set of topology rules also to make sure that the individual Postgres backends don't land on the same node either. So it's just easier for me to run it in regular pods because I can use the same set of topology rules for both.
Yes. The key point is, actually, the reason why the people select the static pod in Kubernetes environments, the reason is the people don't understand the scope and out of scope what the etcd operator is going to support. The etcd operator is going to support the non-Kubernetes, the etcd operator is going to create etcd cluster, which is supports the application instead of API server. So the reason why people select the static pod, because they don't understand the scope. If they understand the scope, I don't think the people will select static pod in Kubernetes environment.
So more for our demographics. It was actually kind of interesting to me how many clusters question divided into thirds. And again, always take this with the caveat that we don't know that people actually did a count, as opposed to answering off the top of their head. But the fact that we have 1/3 running fewer than 10 etcd clusters, 1/3 running more than 100, and 1/3 for everything in between was kind of interesting. I didn't find any. Well, we'll get to that later. But I mean, maybe this actually makes a lot of sense, right? Because either you are just running one etcd cluster per Kubernetes cluster, or for one or two specific applications, or you're hosting a service that involves deploying multiple clusters. And so maybe for that reason, having those sort of two ends makes a lot of sense. The how do you manage etcd? So by the way, this was a free-form response where people just responded. I went through and attempted to group those responses into sort of different categories so that we could kind of usefully group what people were doing. If you click through from this document to the underlying spreadsheet, you'll see how I grouped those things, because there's a lot of nuance there, and each person's response was individual, and some of the responses are interesting, so I really suggest that you look through those. Again, I have scrubbed any personally identifying data from them. But these are my groupings. One of the most interesting parts of it is almost half of our respondees are currently running etcd using another operator. So the people who responded to our survey are people, a lot of whom who are using other operators. Helm is also very popular. And beyond that, various manual methods, etcd admin, or kubeadmin. Obviously, they're talking about the etcd cluster back in Kubernetes, right? the and not any independent clusters. The nice thing about having so many respondees who are already using an operator means that those respondees probably are giving us pretty considered answers on their list of feature priorities. So, because they have some experience with an operator. So the important thing here is we look through the list of feature priorities, and I kind of group them into, they kind of fell into little clusters based on people's priorities. It was interesting, though, that absolutely no priority had 100% response. For example, 2 people did not find creation of a cluster to be an important feature, which was interesting. But the 2 that almost everyone prioritized were creation of a 3 to 5 node cluster and understanding the health of a cluster. And then we have this other cluster of features that more than half of the respondees found to be a priority. And that was minor version upgrade, performance monitoring, upgrading between patch versions, enabling TLS, creating on-demand backups, recovering a failed cluster node, creating a new cluster from backup, and creating scheduled backups. So basically, if you're looking for these 2 things, is upgrades and backups, right? Sort of speaking generally, are the features that most people found to be a priority. And then we have, features that were prioritized by a substantial minority, but not a majority. And that includes things like creation of a single node etcd, recovering from quorum loss, shrinking or growing clusters. We're all in this group. And then finally, we have our list of features where less than a third of respondees found these a priority. And I would say this is honestly my favorite group, because it's the group of features that we can ignore. That we can say, hey, these are not on a roadmap. If somebody writes this and is willing to take on being the maintainer of it, we'll consider it, but otherwise nobody's planning on this. And that includes, by the way, cluster downgrading, which is interesting because for Kubernetes embedded etcd, cluster downgrading has been a continual issue. So it's interesting to see this not on the list of people's priorities for an operator. I mean, it's there, but not for most people.
Yeah, Josh, we should definitely raise that with the broader etcd community, like find out where the downgrade requirements have come from, right? Does it come from like the developers thinking that would be cool? Has it come from like, GKE or EKS or AKS, or has it come from like the majority of end users? It could be that it's something that
it's actually coming from the Kubernetes project itself, because Kubernetes would like to be able to promise rollback for upgrades that don't go well. And if part of the upgrade included upgrading the underlying etcd, that becomes a problem.
Yes, I mean,
However,
yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know that anybody in Kubernetes has ever done a Kubernetes user survey to find out that if this is a problem that people are genuinely concerned about.
Right, like the answer the way you described it is sort of the Kubernetes developers thinking it's cool, but maybe no user cares. So maybe we really do need that. If it's going to be a lot of work, maybe we do need that survey, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, honestly, it's the driving is honestly our testing, rather than users actually saying that they need this. I mean, probably anecdotally, a couple of users have mentioned it, but how representative those Kubernetes users are, we don't know. And so this might actually be something to bring up with, say, cluster lifecycle, and say, hey, maybe we should know how many Kubernetes users are actually concerned with this, because I'll tell you, I was, part of the conversation about downgrading, and that conversation originated with Kubernetes end-to-end tests, not with user requests. As in, we'd like to be able to downgrade for the purposes of having a working downgrade end-to-end test, and not necessarily because it was
Lubomir?
priority for users. Yeah.
I just want to say on the topic of whether we ever surveyed the community on the topic of downgrading. I don't think we ever did. Basically, since etcd was always the storage backend for the API server and downgrade was never supported, I think the whole ecosystem just rolled with the fact that downgrade is a no-go. Rollback is possible to a certain extent, from my understanding. But we just never say downgrade is something that we do, and we never surveyed it as well. I would say this is a much larger topic, because if you look at the in the KEP process, we have something that the PRR, which is what was the abbreviation for that? Production readiness review, right? It's maintained by SIG Architecture currently. And inside of there's some topics about rollback. Did you roll back because of this failing feature for you, and etc. Right? But there's no discussion even about actual downgrade. So as part of the KEP process, which is conceptually core for any new Kubernetes feature, we never discuss downgrade at all. So this is a much broader topic. I would say we need to bring SIG Architecture in this, if we are to drive, downgrade as a discussion topic.
Yeah, I mean, my thinking here is, obviously, discussing operatorizing the embedded etcd for Kubernetes is phase 2 of this working group. So ultimately, downgrade of Kubernetes is not our responsibility right now. But one of the things to do would be to kick that over to say SIG cluster lifecycle and say, hey, this ought to be part of some user survey, because the biggest user surveys on upgrading have been driven by the LTS working group lately, and they do not include anything about downgrading. So we just don't have a snapshot of this at all. But for the 42 people who responded to our 41 people and one virtual combined person who responded to our survey, downgrading was just not a generally high priority, which is nice, because it's not a well-solved problem, and being able to put it in the nice to have category for our roadmap makes life easier for us. There were then a few individual suggestions, because we did provide an other blank, and there's no way to know how popular these were, because only the person who suggested them can see them. But the suggestions included automatic renewal of TLS certificates, which would probably involve some kind of integration with Cert Manager, ability to customize the etcd configuration parameters, multi-cluster support, automated database compaction, which I thought was already part of etcd core, but okay. Presumably they mean other forms of compaction than the ones that are already automated. And more customization. So one of the things to discuss would be whether or not any of those were actual priorities. Because we sort of neatly divided our respondees into thirds between big, small, big, and medium, I decided to see whether or not there were any categorical differences in priorities, and I just didn't find anything that was statistically significant. Because I have to keep in mind that there's only 14 people in each group, right? And so individual differences are probably going to trump category differences. The one thing that I noted that was different in those sets of priorities, and again, there's a link spreadsheet at the top of this document where you can see that, was small cluster users did assign a higher priority to growing and shrinking clusters. And big users did find recovering from quorum loss to be a higher priority. The other part of this is we asked people again in a sort of open format, in an open text blank, what was the hardest part of managing etcd. And this is something else we probably want to look at for roadmap prioritization, simply because part of the goal of automation is to take away pain for users. Now, again, I went through these freeform answers and tried to come up with categories for them, and click through to the related spreadsheet to look at the actual answers versus how I categorize them. And again, there is stuff in the actual answers which is interesting on its own. But based on my categorization here, these were the parts that people had trouble with. The number one being various parts of node management, which included managing network addresses, managing where the nodes were placed, these sorts of things. After that, people had trouble with backup and recovery, which we can see in our list of priorities, and people had trouble with upgrades. So the nice thing about this is what people find hard and what they told us were high priority kind of match up. People did mention compaction, authentication, monitoring, deployment, but only one or a couple of people for each thing. I'd originally put performance and scaling together, but then based on reading people's individual answers, these are really different problems for users.
Lubomir, do you want to add something?
Yes, I had a comment about one of the previous sections, which was about other feature requests. I think. Sorry, I cannot open the agenda document. I wanted to.
Suggested features here?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
I think automatic TLS certificate renewal is actually a pretty good one, and it should be maybe in the main list of things, because certificates expire and there has to be like a mechanism to update them if this is a long-running cluster. The other one, the ability to customize the etcd configuration. This is something that kubeadm did with the so-called extra args mechanism. It's basically part of the API. So I can imagine the operator implemented some sort of CRD that exposes a list of flags that can be passed to individual members, or maybe with a selector, or globally to maybe all members in the etcd cluster. There has to be some sort of configuration exposure via a custom resource. And the other ones, I mean, the ability to customize a post-spec kind of falls under the customization ability. So yeah, I wanted to mention that these customization, configuration, and the TLS certificate renewal, I think these are pretty strong candidates for like the initial version even.
Okay. Yeah, sounds like a good discussion. I mean, I would want, the certificate renewal to work via plugging into Cert Manager, because why re-implement that if we don't have to? Okay, and that was it, because it was a short survey rather deliberately, in order to get people to fill it out. And so that's what we have from the survey. Do I need to still share my screen? Can I exit here?
Yeah, can we create a PR to save the survey result into somewhere?
Yeah.
For
Yeah,
example,
I can go ahead and
under
PR it
sub-
into our repo.
Yeah, under subdirectory under the working group.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah, I'll convert it to Markdown and PR it in.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Do we have any other things remaining from last time? I think we're good on all the tasks that we were having on the to-do list. So unless anyone has anything to add, we should probably move to open discussion.
And I'd say the next steps are to use the survey results and finalize our list of priorities for the initial operator.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think we should create a roadmap based on the survey results. But Yeah, my immediate feeling about the survey results. Most of the feature makes sense, but some feature doesn't out of scope. For example, the node management should be out of scope of etcd operator. The node management should be the responsibility of the Kubernetes cluster, not etcd operator. So we should remove some such that feature.
Just wait, just to clarify, you're talking etcd nodes, not Kubernetes nodes.
Okay, got it. Yeah.
Oh, in that case, the
so-
language it should be called etcd server instance because node kind of
Okay.
yeah, kind of
Instance management.
Okay.
I
Okay,
think the
so
etcd refers them as a member. To be
Yeah,
more
yeah, member,
aligned.
right.
Oh yeah, member X would be good. I forgot about that term. I will change that before I PR it in.
Yeah, sure. Thanks.
Awesome.
Yeah,
James?
now, yeah, sorry.
Hey team, I'll confess to being the one that added the first open discussion item there for today for the evaluation criteria for the operators already out there. I was just going to suggest with the perhaps top 10 or so items that have come out of our survey results, maybe the top 2 that were called out as universal, and the following 8 that were called out as popular features. Those could be good candidates to form the basis for an evaluation criteria for the existing operators that exist. And if we had some other prioritized features, we could also include those. That was just something I wanted to highlight.
So not sure what to say here. I agree that for the existing operators, those features should be, let's say, included in the comparison. But it's not just that part. So there are, at the moment, at least the way I understand it, there are two ways to go. One, choose from one of the existing operators and try to consider it the official one, or improve it, adopt it. Let's say it's a complicated discussion. And the other one is to maybe start from scratch based on the priorities, and being part of Kubernetes, starting already from scratch, there wouldn't be any other concerns like license, existing maintainers, other discussions and concerns.
Yes, sorry, I just want to be clear. I'm not suggesting those would be the only criteria.
So I'm just saying that the criteria are good. So right now there is no decision on the exact direction that we want to go.
Yeah.
Until that part with what criteria to choose. Right now, I think there is still, we're still discussing various, how to say, strengths and weaknesses of each one of them, or to those that we considered more appropriate for the use case. I think Benjamin did a lot of work in that area, but I don't think we're prepared in this call to communicate our decision.
Yeah.
Right,
And
Benjamin?
that's so I actually think as a working group, so while Benjamin has done a lot of work in the lead up to this, which is awesome, thanks Benjamin, we as a working group need to have a transparent set of criteria which we agree on, which we also then apply to those operators and come to a consensus as a group for each one if we agree with those
Okay,
those criteria, etc. Yeah.
I agree. If we want to do that, it will be very transparent. There is no
yeah, it's just we have that artifact in our charter that we must produce for the comparison. So we can use perhaps a lot of Benjamin's work as the base for that, but we just need to go down that road.
Okay. Andre, do you want to say something?
Actually, I agree with James. I think we can collect criteria and create some kind of battle card where we will rank every criteria by the number and just see if it fits or if there's something which will not be, for example, wrong license, which can't be adopted by CNCF, or the wrong framework. So we can just evaluate every project and see if it fits or not, or at least to shrink the amount of these projects.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, at some stage, and maybe if they meet the initial checklist criteria, we'd need to evaluate code quality as well. But if they don't meet the rest of the checklist, then code quality doesn't necessarily. Well, no, code quality matters because if somebody is missing a bunch of things on the checklist, but has really good, very modular code quality, then considering that project as a base for work is possible, right?
There's a lot of factors. I was thinking of, we have these 2-week spans between meetings, and I was sort of coming at it from the angle of maybe we can start to define in this meeting what these list of criteria should be based on the prioritized survey result features, and potentially, we can kind of allocate out, maybe each one of the leads or something picks an operator, and between now and the next meeting, spend some time going through creating their analysis, and we can kind of gradually get this document completed to then be able to move on.
I understand what you're saying, but I think if each of the leads takes one of these operators to review, that would create a very diverse result. It's very hard to be very objective of, I don't know, code quality.
Just a suggestion. I'm not saying that only one lead would review one operator. Obviously, all of us would give feedback, but it's just I'm just trying to think about how we can get some action items so that we can go away and do things, between now and the next meeting.
Yeah, this is Benjamin. I think the organizers can have more discussion offline, and eventually we will provide an official response to the community. What's the decision we are going? Which direction we are going?
So I think what you mean to say is like, okay, we looked at the operators, or we discussed internally, and we have first to choose the path. Do we want to start from scratch and accept every feature as a pull request or discuss it first? Or do we want to try and adopt one of these operators? With all of these involve an amount of work. If you do it from scratch, you have to do everything, which is not trivial. If you are adopting an operator, you have to deal with all the history. So it's...
I just have a question. Who should make this decision?
Yeah, Benjamin. I think it's up to all the LCD operator organizers. Or yeah, that's make another word. It's up to all the SIG LCD and SIG class lifecycle leads to make the decision. But of course, we will, no matter what decision we make, we will provide an official response to the community.
Okay.
Okay, so I would say that the action item for next time should be for, I guess, the 5 of us to reach a consensus on the direction. So whether we start evaluating operators or we want to put together a completely new one.
Yeah. Yeah.
And add the features in the order that we want and only the features that we consider relevant. But anyway, that's I would say that if everybody agrees, we should have this decision in 2 weeks and communicate it with our reasoning behind it.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm not sure I agree. I don't think we can make that decision without actually evaluating the existing operators.
Okay, but even if you are discussing, if you are trying to evaluate existing operators, right? It's one thing to evaluate the features. So I think when you evaluate existing operators, you're not evaluating necessarily the features on our list. I would say I personally would look at complexity, maintainability, code quality, and I would like for it to be as slim as possible, because right now, from the, let's say, etcd manager experience, there are various ways to approach everything, like, I don't know, cluster upgrades or missing broken members. If these features already exist in the operator, an operator, changing them will be a bit problematic. So you will not be able to take the existing operator as is. It will have to be modified to work like etcd, SIG-etcd recommends, right? So we would break some compatibility for that operator, so you would not be able to call it the same name, or I don't know. It's a very complex topic. So this would be my preferred criteria for those to evaluate those operators.
Completely agree. I was sort of hoping in this call we would be able to get to some consensus on, what those criteria might be, so that we can, start trying to make that decision. I just think that there has to be some criteria that we can discuss publicly and document publicly, so that our decision is defendable. So, if whatever decision we make as a group, we need to be able to say, here's how we made it.
I don't disagree, but taking into account, so if we want to look at the operators to evaluate, the leads would have to commit to spending the time until in the next few weeks to evaluate each one of them. So I would say that it would have to be at least 3 of the leads doing this to have some consistent results.
Agreed. Yeah, I'm wary that my one concern is that we would say make a decision to just go off and build our own thing without,
Of course.
I don't want to labor the point, so I'll leave it at that. I think.
Okay. So Benjamin, do you think that we should discuss some criterias now, or we should discuss them offline and continue?
I think, I agree. We should provide our criteria to how to proceed. But I think the top priority for now is to create a roadmap based on the survey result. This is top priority. But of course, we can evaluate we can create a criteria at the same time, but the criteria map is top priority. We should guarantee we can provide a roadmap at the next meeting, but we are trying to make decision on the criteria or even whether choose our existing operator or create from scratch. We are trying to get that finalized before next meeting, but it's not guaranteed.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Anyone else? Any other thoughts on this?
I think some criteria sent to chat can be just considered by the leads, and you can just copy paste it into document if somebody can remember something. It might be useful.
Yeah, like both Andre and I were adding the same thing, which is that we also want, as part of checking the architecture, is looking at what sort of frameworks and stuff they're using, because the support and frameworks and best practice stuff for CRDs has changed a lot in Kubernetes in the last 3 years.
Okay, let's finalize the criteria until next time. And if we have time, we can start adding operators there, like scoring or something based on those criteria. And we can continue the discussion on this in 2 weeks. But by that time, I don't think there is a problem to have the criteria, or at least a rough idea of which ones those would be. Okay?
Okay.
Cool. Let's see what else was added to the open discussion. So I see the list of existing projects.
Yeah, I can comment on this. A few months ago, we also started developing etcd operator. We started the development from the research of existing etcd operators and the opportunity to adopt them. And here I just copy pasted the list we researched at this day. And also I copied a list of the potential adopters and links to the issue where we asking if they need etcd operator. I think it might be useful for the further steps.
Okay.
Just short
Thank you.
note about this, and the comment about every operator is just personal opinion. So I think it can be reconsidered. So we had a team, we agreed on those points, but you can put your own thoughts. I think it might be good if someone of maintainers of those operators can put their thoughts here.
Okay. I see that there is a document with comments, I think from Benjamin, right?
Yeah.
So I guess everybody can go through that just to see the current evaluation. Do we want to? Is there anyone that wants to raise another topic for today? Okay, in this case, I think
I have a question about, sorry for interrupting you.
No worries.
There were some projects which are closed sourced, and there was some intention to make them open source. Do you know anything about them? There were some ideas from open sourcing Datadog, etcd operator. Okay, then sorry.
Not exactly sure what they have there. I
I
heard
think
some things.
Benjamin was talking something about that.
Do you?
Sorry, sorry, could you say that again? Sorry.
I think Benjamin was
HCD
talking about something about that, but I have
Datadog operator.
very little information from this. There's also some development from different companies who have their own development for HCD operator. But since they are not here, I think we can.
Yeah,
skip
yeah,
this.
I just evaluate 4 candidates, probably 3 or 4 candidates. Yeah, I don't have enough, and I don't have enough bandwidth to evaluate all the operators. So for example, something like that OpenShift operator is definitely out of scope because it's just if for example OpenShift operator is just managed is tightly coupled with the OpenShift, so I'm not going to consider the OpenShift operator, something like that. So we just
It also manages static pods, so yeah, it's
Yep.
out of.
Yeah. So we will definitely not evaluate all the existing ADC operator. We just evaluate some of the potential candidates.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Benjamin. Thank you, Andre. So we have homework for next time. I think if there isn't anything else that we want to add for today, we can finish 10 minutes earlier and I don't know, enjoy our mornings or evenings. So, yeah, nice to see everyone. See you again in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Bye.
See you.
See ya.
Thank
Bye.
you, guys.
See you. Have a nice day.
You too.
Have a nice one.